Anyone from the other groups? I see Jonathan's here. Uh, Tyler, Tommy, Raul. How was your guys' group meetings?
We couldn't meet, but we had some discussion going in the Slack. So I will try to explain what we came up with.
Sure, that'd be great. And now Rich is here. What's up, Rich? How was your meeting?
Sorry, what was the question?
I was asking how your small group meeting went.
I'll be honest, I was unable to attend any of them, but it looks like they've made some really good progress in getting some stuff down. So sure. I think, Amy has been a good driver for Group 3.
You're a champ, Amy.
It's because y'all are awesome.
What's that?
It's because y'all all are awesome.
Okay, so let's go in order, I guess, just because I think that makes the most sense. So group 1 and 2, can you raise your hand if you're from that group? Oh, we have no one from that group here? Oh, that would not be good. We can always go through that one together. Tyler might, I'm not sure which one Tyler's in, but Tyler might be in group. Let's have group 2 and 3. Who was in that one? Anyone from group 2 or 3 here?
Group 1 didn't get to meet yet, but we're going to plan on meeting later today.
Perfect. Are you in that one, Tyler?
Yeah.
Sweet. Would you mind talking for your group, or if you got a chance to look at it? No worries at all if not.
I'm not going to lie, I did not look at it yet.
It's totally fine. Don't worry. We can always go through that one as a group together if you guys would prefer that.
Hey, Ty, are we in the same group? I think 6 p.m. tonight.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I just looked through the slides like very, very, very briefly, but I have it on my computer. Pull it up.
Sure. And really, the reason why I'm not a huge stickler on this is really just because this is still an opportunity for us to go through it together. Because this is the third time I've done this group variation of this, I understand that at this point things get a little slow. So I definitely am fine with you guys if you have not gone through it extensively. That's not, a huge expectation I have. But if you do have some notes, that'd be great if we could discuss it.
Connor, just so I don't have like the Office 365, so I can't put the text in the slideshow. So it's cool if I just post it on notes or something, and then did you want them sent in to you? Did you want to just verbally go over it in our meetings? How did you want to break it down?
Well, I could allow you to share your screen, and then we could basically just take it from there if you're cool with that.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Sweet. So I'm going to make you the host. Now we should be good. All right.
Okay, cool. So now I have to admit people. I got Phil. Phil's on me today. Okay, so
watch out.
I'll just mute myself and you can just go over it?
Oh, I mean, you can go over it if you want, but if you haven't looked at it too extensively, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Yeah, let's
you prefer that?
I'll mute myself, and then we can chime in as we go.
Sounds awesome. Okay, so let's go to that first picture there. So this gentleman here, don't you just love it when you have someone that just does everything they ask you to do and they just don't complain about it? They don't say anything. You just know they're going to do it. This is one of those guys. He just doesn't say much. He does exactly what I tell him to do and executes it perfectly. So this is him on day one. And I used him because he's good representation. Not that you guys would know this, just of someone who has a little bit of compensations, but is going to do everything in their power to help themselves get better. So this guy just kind of immediately standing out. You can kind of see that his spine is certainly not straight. I think that's the first thing I noticed when I look at this guy, especially from the back. You see how he has that slightly What else stands out to you guys? Like where does his scoliosis go? Like, what do you guys see with this?
I think he's got a lateral orientation. The left side seems dropped, like from the pelvis standpoint of the pelvis. Then it looks like the left rib cage is kind of shot over to the left, and then he's compensating through the spine's coming back to the right.
Yeah, if you notice his right crease, his waist crease on his right, it's actually a little bit more indented than his left. And you can just look straight on and tell him that he's leaning to he's side bent to the right. I think this guy, because his right hip is higher, he's just in this starting left AIC orientation of his pelvis. I think just because we would expect the right side to be higher. And then you can see that the spine then counter rotates back to the left. And you can see that his right shoulder is a little bit lower than his left, which is totally normal. But I think just the degree of which his scoliotic back, and I mean, I use scoliosis very loosely here, very, very loosely. And you can see that his right scap is a little bit more forward and his left scap is a little bit more raised. And he's just like, I think this dude is just an exaggeration of a left AIC, but he's really, he's really not that crazy, I think.
Connor,
stick out.
Connor, would you be able to mute everybody? I have you on my screen on top, and there is a participant with a phone number or something. It keeps popping up, so you always getting away.
Maybe that would do it. Tyler, would you mind muting that person since you're the host?
Yeah, give me a sec.
Sweet.
I asked to unmute, right?
No, you would go to the Zoom. Actually, for this one here, why don't you just make me the host and then
Okay.
You're all good, man.
Oh, guys, this is a lot of pressure. Make us. Okay, got it.
Sweet. Okay. Now I don't know what I'm doing. There we go. All right, let me know if that fixed it, Fleming. So here, let's do this really quick. Oh wait, I am viewing Tyler's screen. So Tyler, you're all good. I think we're still rocking and rolling here. All right. Anything else stand out here? I think his head is side bent to the left.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that. I know like basically from the starting at the cervical, like C7 up is kind of like next level. But I would say, are there any telltale signs that let you know like something originating from the head and neck versus originating from the pelvis?
That's a good question.
Not so much.
I think because I'm not a physical therapist or like any sort of like therapist, I think that I can't go there because it's just, you start to get in a legal gray area a little bit. So, generally speaking, though, if you clear up the thorax and pelvis and their problem's not solved, you look at the foot. If that doesn't do it, it's the neck or cranium or vision or something like that from there. That's kind of the progression I use. And in the advanced course, we will also talk about how we use those, that's the next layer of progression right there that we will talk about. But with this guy, or just with anyone really, if I know that I can't reposition them, like I can't get them to improve any of their measurements, and just everything seems to work on other people doesn't work with this person, I'm going to start thinking it's something that's going on upstairs, like within their cranium or neck. If just nothing adds up, I'm going to start thinking that. What's up, Raul? I saw you.
No, I answered myself. It's good.
Gotcha.
So this is a super interesting picture. Sorry, this is the first time I'm seeing this.
Please.
So his right shoulder is higher than his left, and you can literally see his right scalenes are like on fire. Well, to me. So when I see like a left shoulder that's higher, I usually look at like the length of the trap, like how far is it from the top of the shoulder to the neck. And to me, it looks, I say higher, but I mean, it's more like, it's like closer to his neck, right?
Okay. I see what you mean with that. Yeah.
And you can literally see his right scalene is like popping out to cause that movement.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a tricky kind of scoliotic pattern, because it is like a traditional like right thoracic scoliosis. But when you look at like the base of his neck, it's like something is going on there. So that I just think this is a super good picture of like that superior T4 airflow, or like that right scalene just being super toned up. And he's still over to his right side. So it's just a really funky static posture.
Yeah. I think his pecs are also interesting to look at. I think like they're significantly different sizes, I think. Like not
the left one's way
nothing
bigger.
that's like definitely super alarming, but it's like you are for sure asymmetrical with your pec development. Left pec is certainly bigger. Yeah.
Connor, I noticed that you, like from a lot of the case studies, you tend to mention the pec quite often, like how one pec's more developed than the other.
Yeah. In the left AIC and right BC pattern, the left pec is basically just opening up the left chest wall, which that also feeds into the posterior compression on the left side. So I think that's just kind of what's going on here with this guy. Yeah, that's also why you see usually more left limited horizontal abduction measurements.
You said this guy's a wide ISA. Now he kind of looks like a pooch belly, but maybe he just like hasn't had enough beers to have a beer belly. Like, what do you know what I mean? Like, it kind of looks pooch, but is it just because is it just because he's leaner?
You know, he's interesting because he was like 110. So I called him wide, but I wouldn't be surprised if he started out more narrow than that. But for the purposes of this, I just called him a wide, because when I actually had his wife do, because it was like I couldn't make a determination just by doing this with just me and him. So I had his wife lay him on the ground and like actually take the real thing with his arms up, and he was about exactly 110. So I think he's a wide now, but it's obviously impossible to say if he started off more narrow than that, but I would not be surprised.
You're measuring with arms up. Do you mean arms like this, or arms above head?
Right here.
Arms above head.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, cool.
Let's go to the next picture. All right, what do we see here?
Some late stance feet, definitely. Yeah, I could say late stance on both. A little more on the left, but
I'd say more on the left. I'd say let's take a look at his arches on the next slide. So right arch for sure higher than left. I think his right side isn't quite in toe off yet. I don't think he's quite there. But if you go back to the last picture, the picture is not the highest pixel quality. So you can't really tell what's going on with his femurs and tibia too much, but you can definitely tell that left tibia is going out a little bit more. And I think that because his right big toe is relatively more straight ahead, I think that this guy is probably in more mid stance on the right side, but he's also probably like starting to enter late. I've also been playing around with this in my head, toying with it, of the idea of talking about like early late stance and like late mid stance, but I think that gets too confusing. So I think that this guy he's starting to exit mid, but he's still there on the right. How do you think this could feed into his right anterior ankle impingement?
Well, sorry, you said right anterior ankle impingement. I'm thinking, like, look at his knees. Because of that hip hike, his right knee is like significantly looks higher than his left.
Mm-hmm. And that's just pelvic position, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I feel like that would probably have some influence on how he's loading the ankle.
Tyler, what are your thoughts? I mean, Tonka.
This is funky. This is really funky. I mean, it kind of looks like what you would normally see in like a left AIC kind of oriented pelvis, but I don't know. I think I would, so just from a PT perspective, I would have to test like it looks like on his right side there's some true tibial torsion, honestly, which is weird. And usually I find that when people have that, you need to get their right glute like rock solid, or else they're just gonna fall back into their old pattern. But yeah, this is kind of a weird one. Because you're right that left tibia is externally rotated, but his left femur almost doesn't look like it's, I don't know, it's just weird.
Yeah, I know.
Just looking at this, like this is somebody where I would need to, I mean, and again, this is from a PT perspective, like I'd need to feel what that right midfoot is doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he definitely has like a lax foot, and you can see that on the left side for sure. And on the right side, you'd expect his arch to be super high here, but it's not.
Yeah.
So just a weird compensator, like you said.
Let's go to his gait video. Oh man, is this the, I hope it's not this laggy. That would be sad. That would be really sad. I wonder if I could pull it up on YouTube really quick. Is that, yeah, that's, it looks like that's too laggy to make any determination. I'm gonna pull it up really quick on my screen and see if it's not a little bit smoother. Okay, might be smoother. Hey, Tyler, would you mind if I shared my screen? Here, I'll try this. Okay. Now it's going supersonic. I think it's the best we can do. It's just like, man, well, I don't know why it's going so fast like that. That's super strange. I probably shouldn't mess around with this too much right now, but I don't know, maybe you guys can tell something from that. It's really hard to tell because this is so out of sync. I think it's interesting how his right foot crosses his midline so much when he walks.
Yeah, it looks like his heel kicks in a lot more on the right side, like when he's
that
walking
right
away
there?
from us. Yeah, you see how he, like when he's on toe off, he almost like drops to the pinky toes with the right leg, and then when he
Yeah.
comes through, he's like swinging his heel in relative to his foot or to his toes.
Yeah, you see that a lot with runners. They call it like a navicular whip, but that's all midfoot, and it's basically like no right glute max. And in order to get that foot through, you have to kind of like shove your heel out to the side.
Yeah. Yeah. He has no push off there. He's like kind of dragging that foot through. Yeah, this is interesting. And what actually, well, you guys will see in a second what his assessment is, but what really helped this guy was not really the left side stuff, but as Tyler touched on, the right side stuff. That's what really helped this guy. So this is his assessment result. He's a 36-year-old car assembly line worker, so he stands a lot, which is not something you hear a lot with people. Most people sit too much. This guy stands too much. His injury history is a basically just surgery on his left rotator cuff, which might be feeding into his apparent sort of like right shoulder and left shoulder discrepancy, anterior ankle impingement, right low back pain. So this is what we got going on here. So Ober's was positive, so he failed both sides. His squat was parallel, very standard hingy squat. Toe touch was mid-shin. Supine knee to chest was 100 on the left, 90 on the right. Straight leg raise was 80 on both sides, but it looked very much not controlled. His HGIR was pretty poor on both sides. ER was perfect on his right, but limited on his left, probably more so than a normal discrepancy. 30 degrees is pretty, a lot, really. HG abduction is pretty good on both sides. In fact, that's good. Adduction is pretty poor on both sides. Shoulder flexion is quite better on the right. So with this context, what do we think? What we'll probably do for this is we'll just go through the first two phases so we can have time for other groups to discuss. So what do you guys think about the fact that he's a wide ISA? What do you think in terms of his compensation layer? What do you think he is? Secondary. And why do you think that, Amy? You can talk.
The reason why I think he's secondary is I mean, I've always thought that if there is if there's like a lateral thing with the pelvis, then that's automatically a secondary compensation.
I think it depends which side it's lateral. If it's the right side that's higher, I'm not like going there immediately, you know, but if the left side is higher, I'm starting to think along those lines.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I think I agree with you. I think he is secondary because he's missing a ton of IR in both his pelvis and his rib cage in particular. And with the wides, they like to compress that rib cage first for their secondary. So I think he is, yeah. So what do we want to restore first in this guy? We won't program anything. We'll just talk about priorities. So the first thing I would want to restore on this guy is probably.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Raul.
You said he's missing IR in the pelvis, but his single leg rise is pretty good. Mm-hmm. And that it's an indicator of internal rotation too, right? Mm-hmm. So how is that he's good in single leg rise, but not in toe touch?
I think because his Obers was really poor on both sides, like he was pretty locked up. That's a strong indication. But also I think his straight leg raise was more of an inability for it was more of a hamstring length issue. And this is where it gets like, you just have to do enough. You have to work with enough people to know it when it's like, okay, you have IR. It's like, oh, you're just getting there because your hamstrings are long. When this guy did his straight leg raise, he couldn't really get his hamstring on the ground. So he was like in clear anterior pelvic tilt when he started, and he just couldn't get that hamstring to drop on the side that was opposite of the active leg. So when he did this, he was basically just using his hamstring length and bypassing the need to get genuine. I think he does have IR, but I don't think it's as good as it potentially should be for a primary. That's why he's more secondary at this point.
That's why it gets confusing with me. Like, we say, okay, he has long hamstrings, but then in the toe touch, he should be able to touch the toes if he has long hamstrings too.
Mm-hmm. I think with him, he really could not recounter nutate his lumbar spine, that's what was locking up his toe touch in particular, which is what he basically needs to do. And that's also what he needs to do to complete his straight leg raise beyond about, I believe, 70-ish, 60-ish degrees is where you're going to get that recounter nutation. So I think the reason why, if he really did have full hip extension and he started his straight leg raise, I don't think he would have gotten to 70, because I think he would have actually stopped probably somewhere around 55-ish, because he lacks that ability to get to the last, the recounter nutation, the basically getting back into external rotation. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
So first things first, I want to make sure that this guy has his shoulder flexion back, because he has compression below the level of his scapula on the left side, definitely. Right side, less so, but he still has compression in his back there. I want to make sure that we can get this guy to restore a little bit of hip flexion. And I also kind of want that toe touch to get a little bit better, but primarily we're going to go for shoulder flexion, hip flexion. And then hopefully by the time we do those two things, his right Obers will also begin to improve a little bit. So after I did that, what would be some things we wanted to restore? So let's just write that down really quick. So we got I want that HGIR, and I would want the okay, so what would phase 2 be then if we wanted to restore some things in phase 2? When I'm testing the toe touch, what cues do I tell them? Are the knees locked? What would it mean if their hips went backwards rather than staying relatively over the feet? So yes, so going back to just like the toe touch basics, I will tell someone toes straight ahead, feet hip width apart, and then basically just keep your knees, I say mostly straight, and then I want to see what they do. Because sometimes mostly straight to people is correct. Other times they bend their knees way too much, and I just want to see what they do straight away. Then I'll cue them into a little bit more of, okay, I want your knees like only very, very slightly bent. Now they should have some degree of posterior translation of the hips, but if they turn it into a literal hip hinge, then that's probably a hamstring thing. And they just like palm the floor with that, that's probably a hamstring thing. If they don't have any posterior translation of their pelvis and they just fold over, that's a rib cage compression. That's just using rectus compressing and going down. You'll probably see a tent with that. All right, phase 2 for this dude. So let's say we restored these things. We would want to do what then?
120-degree reaches.
Well, that could be part of what we're going for, but what sort of these measurements would we want to clear up?
Oh, shoulder flexion.
We got that one earlier, but we could make that better for sure. For sure, we could make that better.
Ober's test?
Yeah, yeah. And
like a straight leg raise that's true without the anterior the anterior pelvic tilt.
Yeah.
And then ER, maybe shoulder as well. Yeah, adduction, like Ryan Salmon
I think
says.
adduction. I think you nailed. Yeah, I would do shoulder adduction. I would do Ober's, and I would make sure that straight leg raise is good with the proper amount of hip extension. All right, so let's save some time because I want you guys to talk about what you did with your groups. Yes, Ryan, nice job. I want to hear what you guys had because I don't want to just do all the talking. So let's have group 3 and 4. Whoever was in that group, let's have whoever you guys determined to be the talker and the presenter. Let's see what you guys came up with. Did we determine anyone?
Did we determine anyone, y'all?
Who was in it? Raise your hand if you're in it. Man, okay. Someone take the reins. I don't want to just like pick someone.
I will. I'll take
All
one
right,
for
Amy.
I'll take, yeah. That's what
I'm gonna let you share your screen.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so much pressure. It's such an honor to share Connor Harris's screen with my little laptop. Right, so yes, the, okay. Desktop. All right, so I didn't know what ankle impingement was, so I had to look that up, by the way. So let's go for our, I put it in PDF form.
Okay.
Hold on, y'all. Okay, here we go. Our case study.
Charlie. That's not his name.
We decided to give him a name.
I like it.
More
He does look like a Charlie. I'll give you that.
He does. He does look like a Charlie because he's a person and made him more relatable and just made it more like, oh, we're actually designing a program for a real person. So y'all, this is Charlie. He is a 23-year-old male. He is a marathon runner. He is respiratory limited in conditioning. His injury history is right neck pain, right low back pain, and he complains of tight hip flexors. His primary goals are postural correction, and he wants to improve his running performance. Right.
Can you
Yeah.
zoom in on those pictures, or do you have them
I would
more?
be happy to.
Let's check this out.
Oh,
Oh.
wait.
Any chance we can get them a little higher resolution?
No.
I have them here if you need them.
Well, let's defer to you. All
Sure, and then we'll throw it back your way right after. that.
right.
All right, come on, PowerPoint. Amy, would you mind
Yeah, giving it back to you.
the
so-
host privileges?
Oh yeah. They're yours to give and to take it.
Thank you. Oh, can you click on the 3 blue dots on my name and then say make host?
I would be happy to.
Thank you. This guy, I really want you guys to see this dude's posture. It's pretty crazy.
Did you? It is. Okay. Good.
All right. This is what we got. So the guy's like, he's kind of like he sits a lot. He's kind of a desk worker. He nerds out on his games just like, any awesome human does. So he sits so much. And other than his running, obviously. So this is kind of what we see right out of the gate. What is really standing out immediately? Shoulders are.
Left AIC pattern.
Potentially. His just right. It's crazy. Look at that. That's like the ultimate low back compression right there. No wonder his right low back hurts, What else stands out? His belly button is torqued to the right. His obliques, his trunk rotation.
You go back to the first
We
picture.
looked at his nipples. We love that. And his left one is lower than his right one.
For sure.
He kind of looks like he's like pushing back onto his left side, which makes me think he's more like he's definitely secondary, probably tertiary.
He's getting there, that's for sure. His right arm is closer to the midline of his body than his left. At least it looks like. Or that would be his yeah, that's his right arm. Yeah.
It's hard to tell if that neck rotation is real, like, or if he's just, like the rotation.
I think it kind of was a little bit. I think he's a little bit exaggerated here. These pictures are always just like all over the place, but this guy's actually traveling all over the world right now. He's just like hopping from place to place, being a nomad, which is kind of cool. But yeah, his pictures are always very inconsistent because of that. But yeah, I think his neck is definitely torqued a little bit. All right, I'll throw the screen back to you, Amy.
Oh, so much. Okay, so page number 2. Y'all, I have to do things in color because that's just how my brain organizes things.
Breaks it up from the purple all the time.
So these are his initial assessments. Obers, fails the obers on both sides. Astragalus on a squat, palms to the floor, supine to chest, 100 left, 100 right. Straight leg raise, 40 on the left, 40 on the right. HGIR, 50 left, 30 right. HGER, 70 left, 70 right. HG abduction, 20 left, 20 right. Shoulder flexion, 90 on the left, 100 on the right. So obviously he's a narrow ISA. He exhibits a potentially like left AIC pattern. His toe touch, palms to the floor. So obviously he has eccentrically oriented hamstrings. And his anterior upper chest wall is compressed and needs expansion at T5 through T7. Am I on track? You can interrupt me if I'm just like way off.
Did you get his adduction measurement?
I didn't see that. I didn't see that listed, or did I miss it? No.
It was there. It was 10 degrees on both sides.
Oh, okay.
All good though. But yeah, he does have anterior upper compression for sure. But I don't know if this guy's in a left AIC pattern. I think he is far beyond that.
Okay. We didn't assess his feet because we just didn't have like a very good consistent view of it. So we just we just let that one go.
Fair.
And he needs, looks like he needs medial hamstrings, expansion of the rib cage at anterior rib cage T5 through T7, expansion in the posterior rib cage T5 through T7. All right.
Mm-hmm.
What else did I miss? What else did we miss?
I would just want to nail down his pattern. So what do you guys think? He's clearly a narrow that's compensated dramatically. Where is this guy?
We decided he was secondary compensation, not tertiary.
Yeah, I think he is actually more secondary, but I think he's starting to push himself in the direction of tertiary a little bit.
That's why we are making our intervention here.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what do we want to do with, because it's always tough when, you know, their squat is ass to grass, their toe touches. And honestly, this guy could pull his knee back into hip flexion to like 140 degrees. But again, he couldn't keep his hamstring down. As soon as I forced him to focus on that the most, he had very little true hip flexion. So, all right, well, let's see what we got here.
Okay, so I know that you listed 3 priorities, but we wanted to just put it down on paper, like what we were looking at, and have those in mind throughout the phase 1 programming. So improve shoulder flexion to 120. You always emphasize how like shoulder flexion is very important. It's just as important as hip flexion. So we want to have that on point. We want to improve HGIR, improve HGER to 90. Overall expansion, because we're in phase 1, improve active knee to chest to 120. Left side should be a little bit more than the right. So keeping in mind possible left AIC pattern, narrow with secondary compensations. All right, so.
James had a question really quick. What is the biggest linchpin for you to decide between someone being secondary and tertiary? I think their hip flexion and their shoulder flexion. If their shoulder flexion is below 90 on both sides and that hip flexion's like crazy, and also in their feet, if you have narrow ISA with 100% collapsed feet, that's usually an indication. That's bad. And if you have a wide ISA with super supinated feet, that's very concerning. That's probably not good either. Hopefully that helps, James. All right, go ahead, Amy.
All right, so for correctives, we did a standing supported stack with low reach against the wall. And that's to teach Charlie how to stack his rib cage, to have it have some like rib cage retraction, some posterior tilt of the pelvis with his knees forward to restore hip flexion, upper and lower posterior rib cage expansion. Corrective number 2, hook line hamstring facilitation. This is to also help him to get his hamstrings online, to feel where, to get them activated. Like, wake up, these are your hamstrings.
Mm-hmm.
To restore a lower and upper posterior ribcage expansion, inverted rock back lats, stretch to inhibit concentrically oriented lats, helping to restore hip flexion anterior and posterior, upper and lower ribcage expansion.
I really like the standing supported stack. That was a really good choice. And I'm not sure many people's minds would have went to putting him upright right away, especially this guy. But this dude in particular, that stuff really, like, the dude needs so much just awareness of what a stack is in the first place. To do it standing, I think is really smart. And also, I think with the hook line hamstring facilitation, I probably would have went with a 90-90 hip lift for this guy actually, with a ball between his knees. But yes, still going for the exact same things you're looking for there. And I like the inversion for this guy for sure. That was a great choice.
I had a great, awesome people like making decision behind that. That was not me, or well, I participated, but I stand on the shoulders of giants. Number 4. Here we go. Just like in my computer. Okay, here we go. All right, so this I listed the I kept the phase 1 priorities listed. Lower bilateral pull, TRX hamstring curl, possibly with like the ball between the knees. And then Ryan suggested this particular exercise, the 90-90 single leg hamstring bridge, where you have like your heel on like a block, not a block, but like a box or a bench. And then lower bilateral pull is a 90-degree goblet squat with a tempo, perhaps a mini band around the knees to just give him some expansion. Keith suggested that we do this before we do the ball between the knees goblet squat to 90.
What was your thought process as to why there?
Mine or his?
Just your whole group, I guess. Why would you go band around the knees versus ball between the knees here? I don't think either is wrong. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
Because like we're sticking to, because we wanted to hold true to that. Well, phase 2 or phase 1 has to be expansive. We expand them before we compress them. That was the rationale for that, and I thought it was really wise. And I was like, "There's a point there," so I put it in there.
I'm glad this came up, and I kind of knew it would. So this is one of those things where this guy has an ass to grass squat. So it's not that I think his expansion is off. I think the fact that his hip flexion is so limited is a reflection of him missing hip extension. So I think with this guy, this might be one of those cases where I actually might have him do a tempo squat to 90 degrees of a box and then coming up from there. Maybe with a ball between the knees. I would have to see. Well, I did, and it actually did help. Ball between the knees, tempo goblet squat. That would be really beneficial for him, because this dude, like, all the glute, he used to do a ton of glute work for his anterior pelvic tilt, and it just wasn't working. He couldn't feel his glutes contract. That's because this guy's glutes are always on all the time. He's got like tight butt syndrome, right? He's just like down here. So he really needed to open up his pelvic outlet. So that's why I think that would be beneficial here. But it's also, this is a harder case, and I totally understand why you guys chose mini band around the knees. If you did go that way, I'm sure your program would not have been inhibited. You would probably been totally fine. That's just little 2 cents.
Awesome. That goes in the tip jar, that 2 cents. All right, so lower unilateral push. Front heel is elevated, split squat with contralateral load reference for IR, for some IR. But no hip shift. We didn't put hip shift in there. Upper horizontal push, hook lying dumbbell chest press with neutral grip. Upper vertical push, staggered stance landmine press. Upper horizontal pull, incline alternating dumbbell row, like on the incline bench.
Sure.
Core is front rack carry. And then core 2 is that supine cross connects at the wall.
Very good choice.
Awesome. I got to work with so many smart people.
Yeah, that was solid. Really nice work, guys.
Okay, number 5.
Real quick, can we go over why you would choose a contralateral versus an ipsilateral load there on the split squat?
Well, it would have been like more, I guess, expansive if we had like an ipsilateral load, but I think we went with contralateral load. We went with contralateral load, but no hip shift, and front heel elevated for just some IR. I mean, it couldn't hurt because he's a narrow.
I don't think you're wrong, Amy, at all. Tyler, where does your head go with that?
I don't know, because my head has gone in 3 different directions in the past week because of things people have told me. So I just want to talk about it more.
So with the contralateral load in that position right there, I would consider adding a hip shift, but not if it's a front heel elevated, because that's such a heavy heel strike bias position. So I would say the contralateral load will help them get a top-down influence from the trunk. That will help them turn and sense that heel in the front more. So if their left foot's forward, holding it in the right hand, that's going to help them better sense that heel on the left, because the rotation from the trunk down is allowing me to better sense that, especially if I'm kind of aiming, so to speak, more inward here, I can sense that heel very much so. Whereas if I were doing ipsilateral load, I'd be going into ER, getting into a little bit of IR here, then I'd have to push and propel. But I wouldn't really do that a lot with a front heel elevated split squat, just because that's such a heel strike position. You're not going to get the forward shin angle to sort of go from IR into a propulsive state after that.
Yeah, because it feels a little awkward.
Yeah.
Just from my own experience, it feels awkward. Okay, so we decided to have 2 conditioning phases. I don't know why it didn't save correctly, but like here on my iPad, there's like we made a second column of the phase 1 conditioning. So we have this one, which sagittal plane oriented. It's balloon positional breathing in a supine 90-90 at the wall with
Great
the
choice.
balloon, obviously, 10 to 15 minutes at 20 breaths, 2 to 3 times a week. Add 5 minutes on each session. When comfortably doing 30 minutes, increase breathing rate to less than 5 per minute, take away 5 per minute, and then back them down to 10 to 15 minutes. General goal, 40 breaths per minute for 30 minutes. But because he also probably wants to integrate, because he wants to improve like running performance, we also went ahead and gave him another phase 1 conditioning thing to do once a week. And that warm up is just quadruped breathing, isometric hamstring bridge, workout 30 to 45 minutes of running at a slower than marathon pace, pause workout when biometrics and breathing pace breaks down, and rest in the quadruped position. Additional 1 to 3 easy ones plus 1 long run.
I see. First of all, I think it's awesome you chose the balloon thing. That's really, really smart. This guy, I mean, like, he does so much long duration aerobic work as it is. I think working on his breathing mechanics, which are obviously pretty compromised, is great. I think especially after he did some of those drills, rather than I wouldn't have him just do this without having done several sets of the actual like drills. But I think with the other stuff, I think he does so much long duration aerobic work that this guy could benefit from doing a little bit more higher intensity stuff, especially because he's respiratory limited. He doesn't have that as high of a risk as compressing, although with this guy's body, who really knows? So I think I would probably do a little bit more higher intensity stuff with this guy.
Okay.
Because he's getting so much of the other end of the spectrum. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, good thing phase 1 is only just a few weeks, because then we step it up.
Okay, let's see it.
Yes. Now we go to page 6. Okay. Phase 2 priorities. We don't have like measurements or anything. But this is the list that we came up with. Improve extension, adduction, anterior expansion of the rib cage, shoulder abduction, shoulder adduction, pass overs test on the right, and the left may be a little bit lagging, and just give him overall compression. Hopefully we've taken him to like closer to primary compensations of a true narrow.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hope. That's the hope.
For sure.
That's the new hope. For correctives, we put all fours breathing with heel reference at the wall, with a book underneath his left hand to bias the right anterior upper rib cage expansion to restore anterior rib cage expansion. Or that was, these are in the wrong order. That's 2 and then that's 1, but oh wow. Sideline left adductor pullback, ipsilateral to get his ipsilateral adductor, his hamstring, and his oblique to restore left hip IR and left posterior compression in the rib cage. Number 3, standing isometric 90-90 supported hip shift at the squat rack. The one where you like you're standing up and that one. That's what I called it. The 90-90 to maximize the compression, the forward hip shift for the concentric adductor to restore pelvic IR on the stance leg, and femoral IR on the stance leg.
Nice. Yeah, good work. Only thing I would say about that is you guys have a ton of priorities in phase 2 here. I would get that a little bit more focused, but again, I think that's just a lot of minds working together. The other thing I would say is his straight leg raise was 40 degrees on both sides. So I think that's indicative of the posterior pelvic compression that he has. And we need to I would definitely want that straight leg raise to get better. And you can do that through pretty much all of these exercises. So I think, yeah, these are all really good choices. In fact, I might actually consider giving this guy an adductor pullback a couple of sets on his right side if I felt like it. Just because I mean his right is super compressed too. His glutes are super tight on both sides. So I might have him do more sets on his left, but I would probably also throw some sets on his right.
How many days a week are we working with this person?
Oh, I would just assume like you're just writing this guy a program. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so up next. Lower bilateral pull, trap bar deadlift with the toes elevated.
Mm-hmm.
Lower unilateral pull. That should say alternating, but yeah, alternating TRX hamstring curls. Lower bilateral push, box squat to 90 degrees with the ball between the knees.
Mm-hmm.
Lower unilateral push, right on the right side, the rear foot is elevated in a Bulgarian split squat, ipsilateral load, left foot, front foot elevated split squat, contralateral hold for internal rotation, for the right side, more external rotation. Okay. Upper horizontal push. Let's just say alternating again. Alternating floor dumbbell presses. Upper vertical push, half kneeling landmine press, graduating from the standing landmine press. Upper horizontal pull, dumbbell row on the bench, plus short seated alternating cable row. You can choose between either of those. Core, we have bear crawl, and then we have a side plank cable row.
Very nice. Very nice work. Yeah, I liked all of that. And if you guys have any feedback or questions yourself, feel free to ask Amy or say whatever.
Yeah, I have one.
I live to be corrected.
The short seated row that you just gave in the last page, would that be an exercise that you would use for posterior like pelvic expansion?
More so for the rib cage, because I mean, it's possible, I'm sure, but that's not where our minds were at that time. But I'm sure Charlie would enjoy that aspect of it.
Amy, I'm glad you actually, because in terms of what your goals are for this phase, like the IR, I think a long seated would be better because that, but I'm glad you incorporated that because I think it's also important to still have things that reflect and help keep the adaptations they got from the last phase. You know what I mean? I think that's very important. I'm glad that got brought up because I think that's a massive, massive point that I want us to hit in this discussion is just because your goals are IR, adduction, extension, doesn't mean that you shouldn't have some stuff that's still ER biased too. We still want to have that, but it's just like the amount of which, the ratio of what you're doing.
Okay, so instead of short seated, it'd be like him seated on the floor with his legs extended out in front of him. Okay, all right, awesome, yes. Okay, Charlie, you know, we're doing okay here, Charlie. All right,
Connor.
Now we enter
what's up,
into, pardon?
Tyler had a question, I think.
What's up, Tyler?
Okay, so the long seated would be more IR dominant because you're more in the 90-degree range of the Lamarck model, whereas the short seated you're getting into like that closer to 120, so that's making it an ER bias.
100%.
Okay, cool. But that's where my question came from. Like this guy's like really, really compressed through the lumbar spine. So when I think of the short seated position, it kind of forces him into that like a little bit more, like would you call that posterior expansion of the pelvis? And it's also pulling him out of the low back compression. Is that a right way of thinking about it, or?
I think you're spot on, man. Yeah, you could very much do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just make sure in that short seated position they're feeling their sit bones, their ischial tuberosities on both sides.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
cool.
I'd cue him. So to help, the cue that I have clients do to feel their ischial tuberosity, and I do this in my yoga classes too. I have people I tell students, I tell clients, I say, take your hands and move the fleshy parts of your glutes to the side so you can feel the base of your pelvis.
Yeah, that's really important.
They're like, oh, what? They're like, oh, I can feel the base of my pelvis. I'm like, yes. That's where it is. All right. So for conditioning, phase 2, once a week on the rower, it's bilateral, 45 minutes AMRAP, 200 meters repeated row as long as comfortable. Rest 90 to 108 seconds between sets. Cut off workout as soon as biomechanics break down, or he can't hit his prescribed wattage. Rest 2 minutes in the quadrupedal position, and then resume timer. We also put in a second,
brilliant,
a second one. So second phase 2 conditioning is warm up. Inverted warm up would be an inverted quadruped breathing, isometric hamstring bridge. Workout 30 to 45 minutes of running at marathon pace. Pause workout when biomechanics breathing pace breaks down, and rest in quadruped position.
Nice.
All right. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, Charlie, we're in the third phase now. The force is strong with this one. Oh, that's phase 1. I need, oh, do I need 10? Do I need 9? There we go. Force is strong with this one.
Right.
All right. Phase 3 goals. Keep improving shoulder flexion. Restore neutral pelvis. Left compression, mid stance on the right, mid stance. Let's just say on the right, and expansion late stance. Yeah. No. Oh no, hold on. Left compression, mid stance, and right expansion late stance. Mechanics.
So just get them out of the left AIC, right BC, right? That's the goal here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Pass all tests within reason. Right anterior rib cage expansion, left posterior rib cage compression, left anterior rib cage expansion, and then right posterior rib cage compression. Narrow, I should say ISA primary compensations. Train him as if he has primary compensations as a narrow. Okay, so for his first corrective, he is in that dynamic alternating crab position. Humeral extension opens the manubrium, restores anterior T2 through T4 expansion, as well as posterior expansion below the scaps, which that would be T8. Corrective number 2, inchworm crawls with ipsilateral reach to restore T2 to 3-4 posterior and or anterior and posterior expansion, because it's an inversion. All right, am I on track? Is this okay so far?
You're doing well. The only thing that comes to my mind is, because you're seeking to restore the left AIC pattern, everything you're doing here is on both sides. You know what I mean? So like, what positions and what exercises can we do to facilitate them out? Because an asymmetrical body requires an asymmetrical approach. You know what I mean? So I would be thinking of more along the lines of like, you know, the senior portrait position, the left side lying right glute max, the I don't know, like isolating more, like doing maybe a split squat on one side, and then that's a corrective. You know what I mean? Like things like that. But I think these are good warm-up activities for this person. I think because he still needs these things, right? So I don't think this is, again, there's nothing wrong when it comes to this stuff, but it's just, if your goals are asymmetry, then we probably want to pick asymmetrical activities. You hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Just yes, I live to be corrected. Corrective number 3, same side arm bar connect with a light dumbbell to restore hip flexion, hip extension, upper and lower posterior expansion.
Okay. Well, so that like anyone can chime in here. What would be 3 positions that would be asymmetrical, or just 2 for the purposes of time? Because I want the other group to be, Amy, you're good. You're good. You didn't do anything wrong. You're good. 2 just basic positions that would be good for this person at this point in time.
Senior portrait.
That's 1. What would be something else? The senior portrait, actually, you know what's funny is I'm working with this guy right now, and he's so close. He's so close, but he's doing the senior portrait because his belly button is still going a little bit to the right. That totally clears him up.
What about the upright runner, or what do you call it, with the right max?
For sure. That'd be a good one too.
Or the right prone propulsion, maybe.
Yeah. I think because he's a runner, something upright would be really great.
Yeah.
All right. So for the purposes of time, Amy, you want to like go through the program part really quick?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Like, let me just battle royale here. There you go. Trap bar deadlift flat foot, Camperini deadlift wide snatch grip with right toes elevated and left heel elevated. Lower bilateral push, safety squat bar, cube box with closed hand, with the handles in a close like higher position, and lower unilateral push, rear foot elevated split squat right, ipsilateral load left, contralateral load.
I like that.
Upper horizontal push, press with Swiss bar, the bench with the feet elevated, upper vertical push, Arnold press with the feet up the wall, landmine rows for upper horizontal push, right ipsilateral load, left contralateral load, core 1, front rack carry, left side posterior expansion, right side anterior compression, suitcase kettlebell carry, anterior expansion on right, posterior compression on the left, and we're done.
See, I really liked I really liked that program in terms of asymmetry. That was awesome, Amy.
Yes, well, it's because everyone contributed their like awesome like minds and insights.
Mm-hmm. And just as like finishing thoughts, I think in terms of how this exercise was given to you, in terms of like the actual like doing the programming, perfect. But in a real life scenario, if we do this much asymmetry with someone, and I, again, did not expect you to know this, but this is just a point I wanted to make during this. If you do all this like if every single exercise is asymmetrical, which yours is not, but I'm just saying like, if we get too far, we can start to get a little bit confusing, and we can start to, you know, make this person feel like they're really broken, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, they're in the last phase. So maybe just like their split squat is different, and then their carry or something like that is different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely understand. But hopefully, Charlie is doing better in his programming now. Yeah.
You did awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
guys.
Connor.
What's up, Phil?
Yeah, so I was in Amy's group as well, and like looking back at the program that you just said, I would definitely agree with, like, let's say I'm working with someone like a general pop client. As far as the goals are concerned, it's good that we all had like something to bring to the table. So like there was a laundry list of goals. But I think in hindsight, like if I'm working and I understand that he's taking everything that we're saying to a T. But let's say I'm working with someone like a general pop guy or girl. Having seen the program, I would still have those goals into consideration, but I would like narrow it down to like 3-4 things.
For sure.
Because you're also going to confuse the person too much. I might actually lose the client.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And you can't
Diminishing
go too
returns,
complex.
you know?
Yeah, I would even say like 2 or 3, like just 2 or 3 things. And then usually, because honestly, it's like if you clear up shoulder flexion and their shoulder flexion is 90, you're probably, when you clear that up, the ER is probably going to get better too. So you don't have to make that a goal. You know what I mean? And that's just like that'll come the more reps people get. But I think it's important to look at everything in like a bird's eye view as to what you want to improve. But also, I think as people get more reps, they start to see when you improve something, this other thing is also going to improve. You know what I mean?
Because there's extremities, like they might go to somebody else, and the person might be like, hey, you know what, you're not that bad, like, and they'll go to Phil, or go to anybody in the group, and they feel like they're handicapped, you know. So I feel like there's a nice little balance where, and it's like what you said too about you don't want to use the term corrective exercises, because then it makes them feel like it's all in the wording, you know, and like I don't want to make them feel like they're dysfunctional human beings, you know.
Yeah.
But I'll know in the back of my head that like there's other things that like we have to address, but I'm not gonna like tell them every detail, like, hey, like we did this test on you and it's off.
100%, man. Yeah, that's also, yeah, you hit a lot of good points there. That's also why I don't go super in depth with my explanations of their biomechanics either anymore, because I just found it made people confused and feel really hurt. And also, I think when it comes to just the language that we use, yes, corrective exercise, it depends on who we're working with. Some people know they're broken and are coming to you because they're broken, but other people, yeah, we got to be careful in what we say. And I think like positional drills, daily drills, things like that. All right, who's in the last group? Is anyone here from the last group? Raul.
Sorry, real quick before we move on. So I don't know about you, but when I put like an ipsilateral load with a right foot forward, I find that people have such trouble like maintaining, like, I don't know how to say this, like they're so far to the right that they start to like do these crazy compensations. And then when you put a contralateral load, or when the weight's in the right hand on with their left foot forward in any sort of split position, people have a hard time getting like left-sided compression to get into that mid stance. So that's why it's like this weird, do we challenge that ability or do we let the weight kind of help this person go into that side? And I think that's where I'm getting really hung up on these things, because for me personally, whenever I do any sort of like split squat or anything on my right side, if I don't have something in my left hand, I cannot get that right arch to the floor and actually push. Like all I use is my like short head of my bicep and my quad, and I literally can't feel glute. So that's just an anecdotal thing. And I think that's really like hanging me up, especially with Bill's recent video. I'm like, that goes against everything I've ever felt or done. So
I hear you. I do. And this is where I think that perspective meets, you know, the principles that I'm talking about. I think we would not probably give a front foot elevated forward hip shift squat on the left and a rear foot elevated ipsilateral load on the right until they progress through their program a little bit. That's why, you know, phase 3, but also I think it's really important. I've found that, yes, if you just give those things to those people, I completely agree. But if they've progressed in their program enough and then you facilitate like, I don't know, left side lying, right glute max for a really basic example, then you have them go into that rear foot elevated split squat with a ipsilateral load shortly thereafter. That's when I find things start to click a little bit. And that's when you start to integrate it a little bit more. But I totally agree, man. That's a good point to hit, because you can get to the point where it's like, this is hindering rather than helping. And I think ultimately it really is about the shin angle. So if you're going to get the shin angle in a position, maybe you just do like a narrow stance split squat. You know what I mean? Maybe you're just here instead of way back up there. and that can accomplish a very similar thing. So I think if we are considering that, I think that can be a good way to like meld these things, but for sure, I totally get it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Raul, do you want to share your screen?
There's nothing but the slides.
Oh,
do you
gotcha.
have it or, yeah.
I'll open them on mine.
Yeah, I have notes, so I will just.
Sounds good. All right, share screen. All right, check it out. I mean, the left shoulder is definitely higher than the right, 100%. His left shoulder is really, really high. Especially that scap is really sort of coming forward on him a little bit. What else do we see here? Check out those feet.
Oh, those are some feet.
Yeah. So what do we see?
His tibias are externally rotated.
It's that right tibial ER one more time for the 10 millionth time. It's always, it's so apparent. It's on there on the left too though. But you can really see like right here, how that tibia is really pointed outward there.
Are we thinking mid-stance feet?
With the group, we said late stance, but I mean, I wasn't sure about it because of the big toe.
Yeah, his arches are relatively symmetrical. They're not anything crazy, but I think you could make an argument that the right might be a hair higher, just a hair. It's hard to tell. But I would say that, yes, this gentleman is probably leaning into his late stance a little bit, but I don't think it's like crazy because you don't see the big toe going in too much. It's relatively straight ahead relative to his foot. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would probably say that this guy is going into late stance. I would say he is if I had to make a determination, but I think he's coming out of mid. But I think narrows really struggle to go to mid. So they often make the leap from early to late. And then this is sort of the transition zone of where he's in, because like he can't pronate, he can't find IR very well. So what he ends up doing is just bypassing that, going to late. He had FAI surgery on his left hip 10 months ago. His left neck was really a problem, a really, really big problem. It crippled his ability to like live his life, honestly. So what do we see with the neck potentially? I think his head's forward, that's for sure.
Yeah, like we just like head forward and I mean, when we go to the assessment, it doesn't fit like the typical left AIC. So that's why, I mean, there was some discussion here about which orientation was it. For me, it looked like a sagittal orientation because I see a right hip hike, and also he has low back pain on that side, I think, or the other side, I remember. But I don't know, like for lateral and oblique orientation, I think by the pictures you showed in the slide, it should be left hip hike, right?
On which orientation?
Oblique and
yeah,
on lateral.
Yeah, because the sagittal orientation is more of like that. Mm-hmm. So that you often see with sagittal, it gets pushed down and the right is still higher.
So first thing that made us doubt is like this guy is in pain and is an asymmetrical pain, and we see an orientation here. So should we address that at the beginning, first phase, or we should go just for easy stuff bilateral first and then start with that in the second phase?
This is the question, right? So I would say that the reason why we have the 3 phases is because if we're just starting off learning these concepts, it's so much better to be safe than sorry. And that's why we're going through like, check this and check this and check this. But in the advanced course, we'll talk about how we sort of like bypass that and go a little quicker. But I think, yes, in this circumstance, like let's say if you've never worked with anyone before, Raul, and like this was your first client, I would say go with 3 phases. Don't think about it right now. But if you did want to make things a little bit quicker, I would go asymmetrical with this guy pretty early. So I probably would get this guy to, have some of those like asymmetrical PRI like drills, but not that would not be his whole program.
And about this, I don't see the difference when addressing an orientation with the exercises. Like I would use all of them with any of the orientations.
You could, but I think the matter of which you do it also makes a difference. And we get into that more later, but in terms of the orientations, the only difference is with the lateral orientation, you want to push them. You want to use the right glute first, whereas the other two, you want to pull them into the left first.
So more adductor, adduction,
adductor, hamstring, for sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, so with the assessment, I mean, this guy is narrow. So what is not fitting on narrow is that the squat is not good, is parallel, and the knee to chest, the hip flexion is not good. So first thing we wanna address, and also external rotation on the left side was not good, and he's in pain there. So basically we would go first with expansion everywhere. Mm-hmm. So exercises like hook lying or hamstrings in the foam roller, that one. Then also a rock back is an easy one, and we get both things at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then some of us suggested the left side lying pelvic tilts, but someone said that this exercise for some people when they start is hard to understand how to do a pelvic tilt with keeping at the same time that you're keeping the stack. So he said maybe is better in later phases.
Honestly, I think it's the best teaching tool because there's a ton of references. Yeah, I think it's, I don't know, I would do it right away, honestly, because
and we get also anterior posterior expansion in the rib cage.
Yeah.
And then the doubt is should be like as I said, something asymmetrical or not.
If you were to add something asymmetrical, what would it be? Like, let's say you were, just for the purposes of
adductor pullback, maybe, or
you very well could. That would be a great choice. Tyler, what would you do? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, finish your thought, Ruth. Sorry.
Also, like in a hook lying position, just do a left side with a hip shift.
Yes, most definitely. That'd be a great choice. Tyler, what do you think?
So this is a super interesting case because it's perfect impingement instability, right? Like they removed his left hip impingement, all of a sudden he's impinging his left neck. Yeah. So when you see somebody just from like a rehab perspective, if you see somebody with any sort of surgery that corrects an impingement, you know that you have to be super careful with how they do that pullback. Because his original strategy was to impinge probably the front of that left hip, and now he can't do that anymore. So when he does that pullback, it's going to be super weird. And when he's lying on his right side, he's probably going to pull that neck up like that. So to me, that surgery throws off so much of his measurements, and it's going to be 5 times harder to get him to feel stuff because of that. So I personally would start with a pullback, but with something between his feet, so it puts him in IR first, and then just separate out what it's like to kind of shift the pelvis versus just pulling the hip into the socket.
Yeah.
So when I see that, I'm like, that is what we have to focus on the most. Because these, like pretty much every single measurement is going to be fake. It's even in the rib cage. I mean, when I'm looking at these rib cage measurements, it's like we don't even know what's going on until you clear up that Obers. So that's just my thoughts on it, because it's super hard to do a case like this where it's like left neck discomfort, but they have that surgery, and I'm sure that their pain started when they had that procedure done.
He everything did hurt this guy's neck. Everything hurt this guy's neck. Like quadruped hurt his neck. Anything where his neck was not like perfectly neutral, or he had to fight gravity to any extent. Supine position sucked for him, but I didn't include that in this because it just would have made things really, really hard. But yes, the pullback activity was really nice for him, and that's the one that we rolled with. So that was good, Raul. Go ahead, Tom.
Oh no, it's just that this would be a super tough case for anyone, especially if you can't do anything manual. Like I would go so much manual on this guy, but
dude was in the UK.
You can't. Yeah, because you have these rehab programs where they do like glute strengthening and like God knows what else, and it just drives him into more compensation because he has to find that impingement somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you for your thoughts, man.
Yeah.
All right, Raul, what did you have for well, we're starting to get to the end here, but I don't know if you guys have somewhere to be, but we can just keep rolling a little bit here. If you were to give them a couple exercises in the weight room, what would they be?
We didn't get deep into this, but basically, as we are focusing on expansion, so we want like a goblet squat with a band between the knees, something like that. Also, with the upper pull and push, we thought about doing a lower first because we want to recapture the posterior expansion instead of going 90 degrees. And also choosing a pulling exercise, lower pull exercise that focus on external rotation, not internal rotation. So probably Camporini deadlift with heel elevated, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be fine. I think that'd be totally fine, but I think I would probably go after a little bit more IR on the left, just because, again, this is one of those cases. And I didn't include all this just because it is, like Tyler's right, it's a very complicated case, but for the purposes of just this example, I just gave you a challenging, but not like impossible, because you don't have all the context of this guy. So I think considering where you're coming from, yes, I think you're making a lot of really good calls. The only thing I would say is just a little bit more IR on that left hip. Okay, let's talk about phase 2 potentially. So, okay, with phase 1 priorities, let's say we were going after shoulder flexion. Well, shoulder flexion is not terrible, but we still want that. Hip flexion. And leftovers. Okay, let's say we got all that looking pretty good, feeling pretty good. Now what?
So if we get that back and we have good measurements in the rib cage, then we could start working on the anterior expansion, like a normal narrow. And also we could focus more in the asymmetry stuff.
Yeah. What might you want to do now that you've given him a left hamstring, a left adductor? What might you want to do then? This is tricky.
Could include right glute max.
For sure. Yeah, I would do that, and we did, and it was nice. Knee to knee, sort of. Another thing you can do is you can give them a left anterior glute med. That would not be a bad call because you've already cinched up the left adductor and hamstring. Give them like total mid stance mechanics on the left via a left anterior glute med working with the adductor oblique on that side. I think would be good.
Which activity for that?
You could do, for example, the one that we did with Ben. The one that Tyler did with Ben, that's a really good one for that. That'd be a really good choice in this instance.
Okay.
Some people can do like an adductor pullback, and then you just lift the foot and you internally rotate, but that really kicks on people's TFLs. I think that would almost certainly kick on this guy's TFL. So I probably wouldn't use that one in particular. In the weight room, you could do those banded single leg step downs. Those would be good.
Okay.
All right.
One question, Connor. Most people are in a left IIC, right? Pattern?
Starting.
Starting. But everyone fits into one of the orientations, or is the same? Like, I'm confused with that.
So orientations are compensations. And if you guys, the more I read this book, the more I just cannot recommend this book enough. This book is PRI. It's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. I wish I had read this earlier in my career, honestly, but it's also not an easy read. And this talks about orientations a little bit. They call the lateral orientation a left upslip of the pelvis. And it's like, yeah, that's definitely exactly what we're talking about. That's how you probably know what I mean. So I think the orientations are compensations. We're starting one way, but if we're trying to find something we don't have, like right hip internal rotation, we might do that. So I think not everyone has one of those three orientations. I think most people are, if they're going to compensate asymmetrically, then they're probably going, because remember, like the compensatory layers are very much bilateral in nature. But in terms of the asymmetrical compensations, you're going to see those three things happen quite a bit. And it's hard sometimes to pin someone as if like you are entirely this. A lot of people are a combination. So that's why it's also important just to understand the difference. If you have more of a lateral, push them back to the left first. You got more of a sagittal or oblique, you want to pull them back first.
Let me write that down.
Sure. And in the advanced course, we're going to talk a lot more about the orientations. I just touch on them in this course because I think it's important to understand the other stuff first.
Connor, what book is that?
This is the Malalignment Syndrome by Wolf Schramberger.
So the term upslip is funny because it's like an old school orthopedic term.
It is.
And it goes back to like PRI is just pinpointing these patterns, or, you know, what we're talking about, just pinpointing these patterns that are already observed, but you don't have to go through the trouble of finding them because you just assume that they're there and then everything works anyway.
Exactly, man. Yeah. The only thing about this book is the treatment is just like not great at all because it's from, I think it was first written in like 2000 or something like that. So like their treatment is like stretching and like bracing people. There's a little good manual therapy stuff it looks like, but no, I think, but the actual, in terms of like biomechanics of things and the anatomy, it is phenomenal. All right, guys. Well, it's 10:30. Do we have any final thoughts? Hopefully that helped.
Yeah, it did.
Good. Anything else we wanted to hit today?
I had one quick question, Connor.
Sure.
My video's off. So normally we start with expansion phase 1 because I really like the phases because it helps me figure out what to actually do first versus let's focus asymmetry, let's focus compression, whatever. And I know that with like a narrow, let's say you have a narrow who's really primary, you might start them phase 2 because like they've cleared phase 1 by default.
Right.
But let's say they're like our guy, or there's other cases where you see kind of a mix. When do you mix phases? Because I feel like it's always safe to start with phase 1, but is there a time when you're going to mix it up? You're going to be like, with our guy, okay, his upper body, we can go phase 1 for sure, but maybe some parts of his lower body will benefit from having compression and adduction, internal rotation and stuff.
Yeah, I will do that. I think that's just another thing where like the more experience you get, the more you can kind of see what you can do and what you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like for example, if I had a narrow who was missing some shoulder flexion, that wouldn't be a good example. A narrow that's missing some, let's say, I don't know. Yeah, we could roll shoulder flexion, even though it's not the best. But shoulder flexion, let's say they're missing like a ton of hip IR, but they have great ER for whatever reason. But usually if they didn't have good shoulder flexion, they probably wouldn't have great external rotation either. So, because the hip and shoulder are very similar. So in theory, in this discussion right here, I would then start to think about more of like, okay, the rib cage needs more of this flexion, expansion back here, but the pelvis itself, like the second guy we talked about today, he's an example of someone where, okay, I'm going to put a ball between his knees and give him a tempo goblet squat, even though he needs all this stuff back here because he was already so compressed posteriorly that like I could get the most bang for my buck by just opening up his pelvic outlet, because he couldn't feel glutes. He couldn't, well, he could because they were always on. He literally could not shut them off. And also, like, after we gave him a little bit of hamstrings, any more hamstrings from there was not effective because he was already narrow, right? So he's already like back here a little bit, and his hamstrings were like pretty concentrically oriented. So we didn't really want to give him too much hamstring. He got the most bang for his buck by getting posterior expansion of his rib cage back. That was by far the most helpful thing.
Okay. Yeah, because with the pelvis, even though we talk expansion and compression, it's really just a lot of it's front and backside expansion and compression, right? Like it's alternating. Like just because if you're getting expansion, sure, but you're getting more posterior compression of that pelvis, which for like a narrow, if you're really narrow and you're really primary, like that's not necessarily what you need more of, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
Anything
Connor,
else?
with these people, you said someone who is compressed posteriorly. So that guy might show like no hip flexion or bad squat, but at the same time have good measurements in external rotation.
External rotation of what?
Hip.
The hip. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, posterior compression of the pelvis takes away internal rotation measurements. Anterior compression of the pelvis takes away external rotation measurements. So I think, yes, if you have someone who's got a lot of posterior pelvic compression back here like this, and then let's say for whatever reason, their rib cage looks okay, then yeah, they're probably going to present with that pretty good hip ER, and their, active knee to chest is probably going to be okay, but they're still going to be missing a ton of those IR measurements. And that's just like a primary.
When you find someone like that don't have a good active knee to chest, but has good external rotation, at least in the in a 90-degree hip flexion.
So you're saying their active hip flexion, knee to chest would be like 90, but their external rotation is just a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
no rotation.
And they're narrow, or are they wide?
I guess it would be wide, but I don't know if you can find both in both cases. I don't, just guessing.
For sure. So a wide, what a wide will do is if they're forward like this, they will anteriorly compress. So they're going to compress this, and then their adductors kick on, which is going to pull their pelvis more forward, but it's also going to do this a little bit. It's going to do this and open them up a little bit, which is going to give them more hip ER access. So that's why you see a bunch of wides like myself who have more hip ER than IR. And I have a post on this on my Instagram of why more athletes and lifters have more ER than IR. And it's just one of those things that the more compensatory you get, the more people start to look the same. And I think this visual will actually really help you guys.
So with these people, you start with external rotation stuff or internal rotation stuff?
So with this, I'm going to just, phase one is like, I kind of say it's external rotation, but it's really just like in PR, I'd be getting people out of a PEC pattern. It would be just like restoring more, just like decompressing all the superficial muscular tone. That's really what I'm trying to do in phase one. And yes, like you get better ER, but you're also going to get a little bit better IR. And then this is just your basic narrow. Does that make sense? How the adductors pull down like this, which then flares out. That's what a wide will typically do.
So can you give an example of first exercises that you would give to that person?
If this was, let's say this is a wide right here, I would give them like honestly, a hook lying bridge on a foam roller with a down, up, supinated low reach. That would be a perfectly fine activity to do with this individual. Other things I could do with that person are honestly, this kind of person needs a lot of hamstrings. So I would definitely start there. And I would probably avoid anything that facilitates a lot of adductors right away. So I would probably avoid ball between the knee type of activities.
No ball between the knees.
No, because they're wide anyway. You know what I mean? So their overall pelvis is already like that. Maybe later down the line, but not right away. This person just needs hamstrings, abs right out of the gate. Probably needs to regain some of their anterior expansion of their thorax. But certainly this person is going to have limited shoulder flexion as well. So those banded chops are going to be really great. I love those. The supine alternating cross connects are going to be great too on a foam roller.
Because Mike Camporini, the coach,
Mhm.
you know, he posted a case also that it was like this, a white, that also it also coach. And all the activities I see from them is like yielding, like just dropping weights and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that goes into like what the wides biases is and what kind of an athlete they are. But wides, yes, very compressive, very concentric. So getting them to yield is really, really important. And that could feed into their actual training program in the weight room. That's for sure some stuff I would consider.
Okay.
But as for like the corrective type drills, that's where my mind would go.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. I can go through a group one a little more if people are interested. Does anyone want Ryan to talk about group one? Because we didn't get a lot of discussion on that. I'd be open to it. Here, Ryan, let's just hear what you have to say. I'm curious.
Sure thing. I have to look at my my
Sure.
slide.
Were you here when we went over this?
I was on the phone, so I couldn't really see or talk.
No worries, no worries. Well, I'm curious to see what you have to say.
So for phase one priorities, I said squat below parallel, increase HGIR and shoulder flexion. I didn't go too depth with what pattern I thought he was into. I thought he had a pretty bad left AIC, but I wasn't very sure.
Yeah, we touched on earlier how it could be. Tyler brought up the idea of superior T4 syndrome, which again I don't really cover in this
Yeah.
program, but it's a thing where basically the right scalene kicks on and then pulls basically the upper back, reorients it, the shoulder down on the left, which could potentially be what's going on here, especially if you look at his neck.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
But those are all great. Yeah, those are all great starting goals. What would your phase two be?
Phase two, Obers, at least on the right,
For sure.
toe touch and HG adduction.
Mm-hmm. Great choices. Great choices. And phase three?
Phase three, I didn't get specific for the goals, but just try to keep what we've gotten. And like if we didn't have leftovers, then I would want that. And full HG probably if he wasn't there already. I mean, full shoulder flexion if he wasn't there already.
Mm-hmm. What would be some of the exercises, the positional drills you would have picked? Excuse me, my voice is very dry right now. Positional drills you would have picked for the first phase?
First phase, I had 90-90 side lying tilts, all four breathing, and inverted lat rock back. The side lying tilts just to kind of teach a stack and get lateral compression slash a posterior expansion.
Mm-hmm.
All four breathing because for more anterior expansion, because he should have his internal rotation, but he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
As a wide, he should have it. And same idea with the inverted lat rock back, more upper anterior expansion.
Great stuff, man. Yeah, those are all solid.
Sweet.
And what about phase 2?
I don't know the technical names. I had right side lying adductor pullback.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of hanging out. In my head, I was thinking I would just have him kind of hang out there and breathe to get that right side posterior expansion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then flop over onto the left side lying with, I don't know what this one is called, where you kind of do more of a reach with your right glute. Or
Yeah, right
knee
glute
to
max.
get your right. Yep.
Good choice.
And then same idea, trying to get left posterior expansion.
Beautiful.
And then I had supine inverted tricep extensions.
Nice.
I figured he would like those as his goals were hypertrophy, and I would get some alternating top side of his body posterior expansion.
For sure. Yeah. Some
Superior is the word I'm
Most
thinking
definitely.
of.
Yeah, that's a great choice, man. And you're pushing the upper limits of his hip extension too. Great stuff. Really good stuff. Did you have any other notes on this guy you wanted to hit?
Not anything different than what you guys said. I wrote some programs for him, but
you want to
that was
review
it.
them?
Only if you guys do.
I will let you be the host and you can share your screen. There you go.
You guys see this? Is
Yeah.
it working? Okay. I've never done this before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm breaking you in.
All right. So the 3 correctives that I said for lower bilateral pull, I said heel elevated trap bar. Lower unilateral. I don't know what these are. I call them retro Camparinis. I'll just demonstrate it because I have no clue how to.
Sure. Yeah, I'm kind of curious what you mean by that.
So if this was a weight, then I'm stepping back into my left. So my left is actually loaded versus the right. I don't know if that's a Camparini or not.
I think the Camparini deadlift traditionally was like a rear toe elevated split stance deadlift.
Okay.
I think that's what's technically. I don't know. I think the name has gotten misconstrued, but I think you nailed it. That's a great exercise. I like that.
Okay. And heel elevated cable Zercher squats.
Great choice.
Landmine contralateral split squat. So that's when I mean, it doesn't have to be a landmine. I just use that for a little bit more of a constraint. Decline alternating dumbbell chest press. So head is lower than hips.
Good choice.
Short seated landmine overhead press. Single arm low cable row. Could also alternate it. And then for a core 90-90 side plank with reach arounds, which is just like holding a light dumbbell, reach under your armpit and reach up. Just because I didn't think he would like to hang out here and breathe. I thought he would prefer to.
Sure. I like that.
I did a reverse crunch because I think it's kind of similar to a drunken turtle. You're just not coming back up all the way. So I thought that would be good for posterior expansion, as well as it'll toast his abs, which you'll probably like a lot.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Whoops, phase 2. Phase 2, regular trap bar deadlift. And then Pat Davidson's single leg RDL with the heel reference. Safety squat bar to box. Front foot elevated, contralateral split squat. Alternating dumbbell chest press, flat bench. pike push-ups. So it's a inverted push-up essentially. Tabletop TRX rows, whoops, just so he can really try to get some posterior expansion at the bottom. Adductor dead bug, which I kind of just made up, but a dead bug where you're holding your hand against your knee on the inside or a yoga block and doing the dead bug from there.
That's really good.
And then the alternating cable chops that you showed us.
Great. I think, again, Ryan, for the purposes of this activity, your goals were to restore IR, extension, adduction. Wonderful, wonderful job. Just in a real life setting, like we mentioned earlier. And again, like this is, you'll get this once you start actually programming for people. We want to make sure that we're still doing some stuff that promotes the other things that we tried to, like still making sure we can get into those positions we restored earlier. So I would probably, the only thing I would probably do to change that would be like the squat. I would probably have him just do like a deep heels elevated squat for his lower bilateral push. Something like that would be totally fine. But I think you did great.
Cool. Thank you. Do you want to look at phase 3?
Yeah, for sure.
For the correctives for this one, I just did hook lying hamstring just to make sure that we're still getting posterior expansion, because that'll be the first thing he loses. Senior portrait, and then the retro Camparinis as more of a warm-up corrective than the unilateral pull.
Mhm.
Regular trap bar still, kickstand RDL with a landmine so you could load it up a lot. Regular barbell Zercher squats. Rear foot elevated split squat. I did ipsilateral. I wasn't sure if I would do ipsilateral on the right and contralateral on the left, just because people get weird about doing asymmetrical stuff.
Yeah. Honestly, I would just do a bilateral load.
You would?
Mhm.
Okay. Bear push-ups, incline chest press, alternating chest supported row, reverse crunch, split kneeling chops. So I guess nothing crazy.
Oh man, but that's a program, like that's the goal of phase 3. Like you're training now. That's what we want to do. And it just depends on what they present like right away. If they don't have any issues, you can have them train a lot harder, a lot earlier. So I think you did great. Does anyone have any feedback for Ryan?
I have a question, but it's more to the rest of the group also. In terms of reps and sets and so on, we have never talked about that, but I find with my clients that yes, for all those exercises, that could be hard, and they could probably be exhausted when they come to the lower bilateral push. So how often?
I see what
maybe
you're
I just want to hear from you in terms of set reps and how many times a week. That I have some in mind, but I'm just curious from your perspective, since this is your biomechanical program. So I'm just curious what people think and what you're thinking.
I think, yeah. So the couple things. The reason why we just select exercises here is because I didn't want to make people do a ton of work, and that's kind of how I did in my case studies. But these are just like spread out throughout the week. You know what I mean? Like these would be, you've got your bilateral. You would probably only squat once or twice a week with this person right now. Same, like all these things would be happening once or twice a week, with the exception of probably the core stuff and the daily drills. As for sets and reps, like I think that's just traditional, S&C, traditional training, right? So you want to have your primary block. You want that to be, probably a little bit higher intensity. And then depending on your goal, right? And I think I've been playing around with the idea of talking about this in the advanced course, but I don't know if I will yet, just because everyone has their own different programming strategies, which is, again, another reason why I don't like to talk about it that much. But ultimately, if you just follow the very basic, like when I program for my clients, first block is their positional stuff, warm up. Second block is if they're an athlete and they want some power stuff, that's coming up next, or some field work, whatever, that stuff's in there. Then their primary block, which is their, probably they're doing some sort of strength stimulus at that point. And then they're doing secondary block, which is going to be either like, depending on if it's like an upper push, lower pull, it's going to be exercises that complement the first one. So if they were doing like a heels elevated front squat, heels elevated front squat, they would be doing a split squat variation in the secondary. And then within their accessories, that's going to be more of like the really heavy alternating drills. That's going to be like the, for example, like hamstring curls, things like that. So that's kind of how I go. And then in terms of sets and reps, it's going to be more like the first block is going to have the bulk of the volume. Secondary block is going to have a little bit less. Third is even less than that usually.
Well, that makes sense. I'm sorry, Ryan, for bumping in. I know I do it my way also, but I just want to kind of have also a confirmation on then how things were kind of in your setting. So it likes, yes, I do the same thing almost, but still, I just want to like confirm or not confirm in terms of where people are. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and thank you, Ryan, for sharing. That was awesome.
Ryan, I have a question. Just like, could I get a copy of your programming and also like the test results? I want to study it deeper. Is that okay?
Like that same thing I just was sharing?
Yeah.
I think I could send that to you. I guess I could post it on the Slack.
Perfect.
Probably.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Oh yeah, Amazon sent me an alert, and I went downstairs, and this arrived.
Oh, hey, look at that! Nice. You ordered that last time we were on the call, right?
Yeah. I wasn't expecting it until like later in the month.
Nice.
So.
Well, hell yeah, it's a good read. You'll really enjoy it, I think.
Yes.
Anything final before we wrap it up here, guys? All right. Well, hey, I'll see you guys Thursday. Review session. I think this one is going to be pretty much just like bring any clients you have problems with, anyone you want to talk about. We'll break them down. All right. See you guys.